Pause for a moment. Not to calculate, not to analyze a spreadsheet, but simply to reflect. Emotionally, look back on your financial journey, not through the lens of data, but through the raw, honest feelings that surfaced along the way. Remember the hesitation before a big financial decision? The pang of regret after an impulsive choice? Or the urgency that took over when the market trembled and you felt you had to act? Now, it's tempting to see investing as an impersonal process, driven by charts, forecasts, and figures. But beneath all the numbers is something more human: psychology, emotional resilience, and an unshakable belief in a future that hasn't arrived yet. True financial success doesn't ride on the back of occasional big wins. It's the quiet result of countless small, deliberate actions, repeated consistently over time. Especially when the market turns red, when headlines shout chaos, when panic is the mood of the day. That's when your real power emerges. You can either ride the wave of collective fear, swept away by the noise, or you can stand grounded on a strategy built not for excitement, but for endurance. That moment of internal decision, silent and seemingly simple, divides those who react from those who build. And in the end, that difference writes your financial legacy. It's not intelligence or luck that separates the truly successful investors from the rest. It's consistency. The markets are filled with people who are smart and informed, but remarkably short on discipline. The greats aren't those who always guess correctly. They are the ones who've mastered the art of waiting. They know when to act, and more importantly, when not to. They resist fear and greed, cling to their principles when storms rage around them, and trust their long-term vision. The financial world is cyclical. Markets rise, and inevitably they fall. These fluctuations aren't yours to control. What is within your grasp, always, is your response, your attitude, your decision to persist. And here's the liberating truth. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be persistent. Real profit doesn't arrive with fireworks. It grows silently, in the shadows of daily disciplined actions. In this realm, reinvestment becomes a quiet superpower. You don't need to celebrate every gain with withdrawal. Let your earnings keep working for you. Reinvest your dividends, your profits, not because you can't enjoy them, but because you understand the real force behind wealth is time. Time compounds interest. Time multiplies small victories into legacy-sized outcomes. A modest gain, left untouched and reinvested over 10, 20, 30 years, becomes something remarkable, but only if you believe in it, before it becomes visible. Investing at its core isn't about chasing wealth overnight. It's about creating a structure that stands the test of decades. In a culture obsessed with instant breakthroughs and overnight success stories, it's easy to forget that true, lasting wealth is constructed slowly, like laying bricks for a home meant to shelter generations. A pivotal part of this process, often ignored, is planning for wealth transfer. The truly wealthy, those who think beyond themselves, plan not just to accumulate, but to preserve and pass on. They understand that wealth is not just about lifestyle, but about legacy. Crafting a will, setting up a trust, optimizing taxes, these aren't morbid or unnecessary. They're acts of love, clarity, and maturity. When you create an estate plan, you're not merely managing wealth. You're making a statement that your values and intentions deserve to live on long after you. Without it, a lifetime of hard work can unravel in legal knots, family disputes, and crushing taxes. The absence of a plan invites confusion. The presence of one fosters peace, direction, and lasting impact. Regardless of your current net worth, don't delay this. A clear will, a specific distribution plan, and, where necessary, a trust, can spare your loved ones from heartache and uncertainty. The idea isn't just to prepare for death. It's to keep your influence alive in the most meaningful way. Estate planning isn't a practice for the ultra-rich. It's for anyone who values what they've built and who they've built it for. It's about ensuring your wealth doesn't just survive you, but continues to serve. This is where tax planning becomes a powerful, often underutilized tool. Tax optimization isn't about evading responsibility. It's about smart, legal strategy. If you've worked tirelessly to accumulate your assets, why let a large chunk disappear due to lack of preparation? With just a basic understanding and proactive use of tax tools, Roth IRAs, 401ks, deferred accounts, trusts, you can preserve more of what you've earned. Start with simple steps. Allocate your investments with tax efficiency in mind. Separate personal and business assets wisely. Gift strategically while you're alive to reduce taxable estates. These decisions may not feel glamorous, but they build the sturdy infrastructure that supports intergenerational wealth. You're not just protecting numbers in a spreadsheet. You're providing continuity, shielding your family from future volatility, and leaving behind a clear framework they can trust. This too is love, expressed in one of its most practical, powerful forms. And here's the beautiful paradox. While you can't predict the future, you can still prepare for it. You can choose today to build a structure that shelters those you care about, no matter what storms may come. Don't wait until you're gone for your loved ones to discover the cracks in your financial foundation. Let your legacy speak, loud and clear. I thought of you, even when I wouldn't be here. Tax strategy, estate planning, disciplined reinvestment. These are not dry financial tactics. They are expressions of foresight and care. They show that you're not just trying to succeed for yourself, but to secure something larger, more meaningful. And this brings us to perhaps the most critical and personal frontier of all, financial education. Education is not the domain of professionals or the privileged. It is the responsibility of anyone who dares to build a better future. Regardless of your current income or asset base, you have the right and the need to understand what your money is doing. Without knowledge, even the best financial habits can collapse under pressure. Emotions, guesswork, and confusion take the wheel. But with knowledge, you gain clarity, confidence, control. Think about how often you've made a financial decision based purely on emotion. An impulse buy, a rushed investment, or a spending spree fueled by frustration or boredom. Emotions aren't evil, but untrained. They can lead us astray. Financial education becomes your compass in these moments. It helps you assess risk, see through illusions, and stay grounded when others are swept away by noise and hype. When markets dip, the uneducated panic, the informed evaluate. When cash flow tightens, the reactive seek outside solutions, while the educated dig into the numbers and adjust strategically. Financial knowledge doesn't just change your bank account. It changes your posture. You stop leaning on others for guidance. You become the strategist of your own life. It starts small, understanding assets versus liabilities, grasping how compound interest works, knowing how to track your expenses, manage debt, and budget effectively. From there, you grow into diversification strategies, asset allocation, investment cycles, and optimal withdrawal timing. Each new concept is a rung on the ladder toward true financial independence. And you don't have to climb it all in one day. Commit 15 minutes daily. A page, a podcast, a YouTube video. Bit by bit, you become someone your future self will thank. Especially in a time when misinformation runs rampant and false promises lure the desperate. Education becomes your shield. It keeps you from being manipulated, from chasing illusions, and from giving into the latest trend without discernment. You can't outsource this, not to a financial advisor, a friend, or the internet. Without a solid foundation, you'll always be at the mercy of others' opinions. The goal isn't just to know more, it's to live better, to make calm, confident decisions, to navigate stress with clarity. Because in the end, money is just a tool, and a tool in untrained hands can cause damage. But in wise hands, it builds worlds. This is the power of financial education. It doesn't make you cold. It makes you wise. It doesn't turn you into a miser. It helps you spend where it matters most. It brings you closer not to numbers, but to the life you actually want. And the truth is, you don't need to wait to be wealthy to start learning. Learning is how you build wealth. Start now, with whatever you have. Because ultimately, money reflects more than your bank balance. It mirrors your beliefs, your habits, your history. It reflects who you are inside. And that's why understanding the psychology of money is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Money, for all its seeming simplicity, as a means of exchange, is anything but neutral. It carries with it the weight of your upbringing, your habits, your fears, your hopes, and the stories you've unconsciously told yourself over a lifetime. The psychology of money is not a side topic or an afterthought. It is the silent engine behind every financial decision you make. It explains why people with the same income lead drastically different financial lives, why some constantly save and invest, while others fall into the same debt patterns, regardless of how much they earn. Beneath every transaction, behind every financial decision, are invisible forces, your emotions, your beliefs, your conditioning, that either serve you or sabotage you. Have you ever stopped to wonder why you hesitate when making a big purchase? Why you feel guilty about spending on yourself, or anxious when planning for the future? These responses aren't rational. They're emotional echoes, often from earlier parts of your life, shaping your present in ways you don't even realize. Your financial psychology begins forming long before your first paycheck, perhaps even before your first conscious thought about money. It starts in childhood, in the way your parents talked about money, the stress or ease that filled your home during bill season, the way success or failure was framed in relation to material things. Words like, money doesn't grow on trees, or rich people are greedy, become seeds that root themselves deeply in your subconscious, eventually growing into deeply entrenched patterns of scarcity, guilt, indulgence, or avoidance. Some people inherit a scarcity mindset that sees money as fragile and elusive, leading them to hoard, deny themselves, or avoid all risk. Others develop an indulgent pattern, spending to numb emotional wounds, to impress others, or to feel a fleeting sense of power. Both extremes can feel protective, but neither leads to stability. Unless you become aware of these patterns, they'll guide your actions without permission, leading you into financial instability, even when you're earning more than enough. One of the most powerful yet overlooked emotional forces in modern financial life is social comparison. In the age of social media, where curated images of success are broadcast around the clock, the temptation to measure your life by someone else's highlight reel is ever present. You scroll through photos of vacations, new cars, designer clothes, luxury homes, and suddenly, without realizing it, your contentment evaporates. You feel less than. You start wanting things you didn't even care about a moment ago. You begin to measure your financial worth by someone else's performance, someone whose reality you barely know. You buy, not because you need, but because you don't want to fall behind. You invest, not because you've studied the strategy, but because others seem to be getting rich without you. And then you wonder why. Despite your efforts, you feel empty, anxious, or behind. This isn't just unhealthy, it's financially devastating. Living according to someone else's image of success means abandoning your own values. And without values to anchor you, your financial decisions lose direction. The key is not to shame yourself for feeling these things. You are human, and emotion is part of the human experience. But if you want to reclaim your power, you must begin with awareness. No judgment, just honest questions. What do I feel when I think about money? What beliefs about money did I inherit from my parents or culture? Do my financial choices reflect my values or my fears? The more honestly you answer, the more you peel back the layers of confusion and start rebuilding a new foundation. And in that process, you'll discover that financial mastery is not just about knowledge. It's about healing. Healing your relationship with money, healing the patterns you inherited but never chose, and healing the idea that your worth is tied to how much you earn or what you own. Because at its core, money is emotion, money is belief, money is behavior. And if you don't master the invisible forces, you will always be a servant to them. Understanding the psychology of money teaches you one of life's most important financial truths. Emotion often overrides logic, especially when we're unaware of it. Think about the last time you made a rushed financial decision. The panic sell when the market dipped, the impulsive buy during a stressful day, the moment you avoided opening your bank app because you just didn't want to face the numbers. These are not rational moments. They are emotional reactions: fear, shame, guilt, pride. They cloud your vision and trick you into thinking your financial situation is worse or better than it really is. And these emotions don't just lead to bad decisions, they reinforce themselves. The guilt from overspending turns into shame, which makes you avoid accountability, which leads to more overspending. The fear of loss turns into paralysis, keeping you from investing wisely. Breaking these cycles begins with pausing, just long enough to recognize that your feelings are signals, not instructions. This is why mastering financial emotion is about mindfulness, not suppression. You don't have to erase your emotions to be a great financial decision maker. You have to understand them. When anxiety rises over an investment, ask where the fear is coming from. Is it from a lack of knowledge, a previous loss, social pressure? When you feel the urge to reward yourself with a luxury item after a hard day, ask what you really need: comfort, connection, or rest. The more you practice this reflective pause, the more you'll build a muscle of financial self-control. This doesn't mean you'll never feel emotions. It means your emotions won't control you. Over time, you'll develop the most valuable habit in all of finance: the ability to choose action based on principles rather than impulse. To go even deeper, consider the behavioral biases that subtly influence nearly every financial decision you make. These are not personality flaws or signs of weakness. They are universal mental shortcuts that all humans experience. Take confirmation bias, for instance, the tendency to seek out information that supports what you already believe, while ignoring evidence that challenges it. In finance, this looks like following news or influencers that support your stock picks while ignoring the signs that things might be going wrong. Or the sunk cost fallacy, continuing to pour money into a failing investment simply because you've already invested so much. These biases distort your view of reality. They make it harder to cut your losses, to pivot, to adapt. They trap you in decisions that feel logical but are driven by emotion. Then there's present bias, the preference for short-term gratification over long-term gain. This shows up every time you buy something on credit you can't really afford, just to experience a moment of satisfaction. or when you skip saving because the reward feels too far away. Present bias is powerful because it speaks to your most primal desires, but it's also why so many people never escape financial insecurity. The path to wealth is built not in the exciting moments, but in the unexciting ones. The decision to invest instead of spend, to save instead of indulge, to wait instead of rush. Knowing these tendencies exist within you doesn't make you weak. It makes you wise. When you recognize the pattern, you can interrupt it. You can pause, reassess, and make a better choice. Another bias that silently derails financial goals is social proof. The inclination to copy what others are doing, especially when we're uncertain. This is why financial bubbles grow. People invest not because of solid research, but because others seem to be winning. It feels safe to follow the crowd. But the truth is, crowds are often wrong. By the time the crowd is buying, the value has often peaked. The need to conform can lead you away from your own values, your own goals, and your own timing. Financial independence requires the courage to think independently, to trust your plan, even when it feels lonely. That's the price of freedom, standing firm while others waver, staying quiet while others shout. So how do you rise above these emotional traps and cognitive blind spots? The answer is practice. It's not about perfection or eliminating all bias. It's about developing the self-awareness to recognize when bias is influencing your decisions. Ask yourself, am I acting on emotion or analysis? Am I following a principle or reacting to pressure? Is this aligned with my long-term plan, or just a way to feel better now? The more you ask, the clearer your vision becomes. Create systems that support wise decisions. Automate your investments. Use written budgets. Reflect before making large purchases. These tools don't just manage your money. They manage your mind. Ultimately, becoming a great steward of your finances isn't just about numbers. It's about psychology, emotion, and discipline. It's about knowing that your biggest threat isn't market volatility or economic downturn. It's you. Or more specifically, the unexamined parts of you. But once you bring those parts into the light, you become unstoppable. You gain not just financial security, but emotional peace. You no longer fear market dips or financial mistakes because you've built the inner resilience to navigate them. You're no longer manipulated by trends, ads, or other people's opinions because your values are louder than the noise. And so, the journey to wealth becomes a journey inward. The deeper you go into understanding yourself, your fears, your biases, your beliefs, the more powerful and confident you become in your financial life. This isn't theory. This is your reality. Every day, your beliefs shape your behavior, and your behavior shapes your destiny. Change what you believe, and you change everything. This is how you go from surviving to thriving, from uncertainty to clarity, from chaos to calm. The transformation is possible. It starts with a mirror, then a decision. If there is one thread running through every financially free life, it is discipline. Not the harsh kind that restricts joy, but the intelligent, intentional kind that nurtures long-term peace. Financial discipline is often mistaken for sacrifice, for a dull life spent denying yourself comfort or spontaneity. But in truth, it is the highest expression of self-respect. To have financial discipline is to say, I care about my future enough to act wisely today. It is the quiet voice that says no to short-term impulses, yes to structure, and maybe later, to the things that tempt you now, but cost you more later. This discipline is not born of deprivation. It is born of vision. A clear picture of the life you want to live, not just now, but 10, 20, 30 years from now. and the courage to make choices that serve that life, even when no one is watching. Because that is the heart of financial self-mastery. Doing the right thing consistently, not because it's easy or exciting, but because it is aligned with who you are becoming. Yet discipline alone is not enough without emotional intelligence. We live in a world that whispers constantly, urging you to spend, to indulge, to equate pleasure with purchase. Emotional spending is everywhere, woven into our routines, our celebrations, even our methods of coping. Stress often drives us to buy what we don't need. Boredom tempts us toward impulse purchases, and sadness or frustration seduces us into trading money for temporary relief. These are not financial problems. They are emotional ones. The credit card swipe is not about the object. It's about the feeling. And unless you confront the feeling, the spending will return. That is why managing money begins with managing emotion. When you understand how emotion shows up in your financial life, you begin to slow down. You begin to ask better questions before each decision. What am I really trying to soothe right now? What do I actually need? What will still feel like a good choice tomorrow? That pause, the sacred moment between urge and action, is the birthplace of wisdom. From there, you begin building not just wealth, but peace. Time, too, becomes a currency. Every moment you spend working, learning, or planning is a trade-off. You are exchanging minutes of your life for either progress or stagnation. Financial discipline teaches you that time, like money, must be managed with intention. This means learning when to work harder and when to rest, when to research and when to act. It also means knowing that how you use your time outside of your career, learning, exercising, connecting, resting, is equally important to your financial future. A life built only on income, but starved of rest and relationships, is not wealth. It is survival in disguise. This is why time management is not a productivity hack. It is an essential element of your financial well-being. How you invest your hours reflects how seriously you take your dreams. And it is those quiet hours of reflection, reading, revisiting your budget, reassessing your goals, that anchor your discipline to something greater than momentary pleasure. A life lived with design, not default. Yet even the best laid plans mean little if not reviewed regularly. Financial discipline is not static. It evolves as your life does. Monthly reviews, budget adjustments, investment check-ins. These are not tedious chores, but practices of self-alignment. They are your chance to realign your actions with your aspirations, to correct course gently before things spiral, to remind yourself of why you began. Too often, people abandon their financial plans because they fail to check in. They assume they are off track, when in truth, they are just emotionally disconnected from their numbers. Reconnection restores perspective, even when the numbers aren't where you want them to be. Awareness is your ally. You cannot change what you don't confront. But once you face the truth with clarity, the power to change it returns to you. This habit of self-checking, of staying close to your money without fear or shame, transforms your finances into a living system, one that breathes and grows with you. Financial discipline is also about defining what enough looks like. In a culture that constantly moves the goalposts, more status, more luxury, more recognition, it is revolutionary to say, this is enough. Enough doesn't mean stopping growth. It means knowing when growth serves you and when it begins to own you. Without this clarity, you will forever chase a phantom, believing that just a little more will bring peace, only to find it slipping further away. Knowing your definition of enough frees you from that trap. It allows you to choose purchases based on personal meaning rather than public display. It liberates you from debt, disguised as prestige. It helps you enjoy your money without guilt because you're spending in alignment, not in reaction. And most importantly, it anchors you in gratitude, which is perhaps the most powerful wealth generator of all. Because when you feel rich in what matters, you stop trying to buy your way into feeling worthy. One of the most dangerous traps of the modern world is credit debt, disguised as empowerment. We're told we can have it now and pay later, as if time and interest don't exist. But each borrowed dollar carries a cost that compounds far beyond money. The emotional burden of debt, stress, anxiety, fear of the future can poison even the most abundant life. Debt, when misused, is a thief of joy and of freedom. And while some forms of debt, such as those used for strategic investments or education, can serve a greater purpose, most consumer debt exists to fill emotional gaps that discipline could have healed. The problem is not the tool. It's the unexamined impulse behind using it. Learning how credit works, how interest silently expands your obligations, and how to prioritize debt reduction strategically can transform this burden into a bridge. But that transformation begins only when you admit that convenience isn't worth the cost of your peace of mind. True empowerment is not the ability to borrow endlessly. It is the freedom to choose without owing anyone. To counter this, one must develop a mindful relationship with consumption. This begins with understanding the psychology of buying, the emotional triggers, the subtle manipulations of marketing, and the beliefs that drive you to purchase. Mindful spending doesn't mean rejecting pleasure. It means choosing it wisely. It asks you to examine your motives, your timing, and the true value behind each expense. Do you buy something because it supports your growth, your relationships, your joy, or because it temporarily masks discomfort? This is not about guilt. It's about alignment. When spending becomes intentional, every purchase, big or small, feels different. You feel proud instead of regretful, fulfilled instead of emptied. And you begin to realize that wealth is not about accumulation alone. It's about resonance. It's about the quiet, steady power of spending in ways that reflect your highest self, not your fleeting moods. The idea of financial freedom often conjures images of retirement, luxury, and endless leisure. But in its deepest sense, financial freedom is not about quitting work. It's about reclaiming choice. It is the power to decide how you spend your time, where you direct your energy, and how you live your values, without being enslaved to debt, desperation, or obligation. It is waking up in the morning and knowing that your life is not dictated by financial fear, but by clarity and intention. That is freedom. But this kind of freedom is not granted. It is built. Brick by brick, choice by choice, day by deliberate day. It requires you to reject society's definition of success and define your own. It invites you to prioritize balance between earning and resting, spending and saving, growth and gratitude. Without this balance, even wealth becomes a burden. A full bank account without health, love, or meaning is not freedom. It is isolation in disguise. Balance is not a passive state. It is a practiced art, refined through trial and error. It asks you to pay attention, not just to your finances, but to your life. Are you overworking in pursuit of more, while missing the moments that make life rich? Are you delaying joy endlessly in the name of saving, or spending recklessly as a form of rebellion against restriction? Balance lives in the middle, the space where you can invest in the future and still dance in the present, where you can set boundaries without building walls, where you can say no to what drains you and yes to what truly nourishes you. This balance is not static. It shifts with seasons of life. But once you begin tuning into it, through reflection, intention, and awareness. It becomes your compass. True financial well-being is not just the absence of debt or the presence of assets. It is the presence of self-respect. It is the unshakable belief that your value is not tied to your income, your possessions, or your social status, but to your character, your choices, and your contribution. Money amplifies who you already are. It can fund your dreams or fuel your destruction. That's why financial education is ultimately an education in self-awareness. When you know your values, your triggers, your patterns, you stop outsourcing your decisions to the world. You stop chasing approval and start creating alignment. And in that alignment, wealth becomes more than money. It becomes a life that feels honest, free, and meaningful. As you close this chapter and look toward the next, remember this: your financial story is still being written. No matter your past, no matter your current balance, you hold the pen. Each decision, each reflection, each moment of courage to pause instead of react. These are your building blocks. Don't rush. Don't wait for perfect. Just continue. Continue learning. Continue adjusting. Continue showing up for the version of yourself who is already on the way. You don't need to be extraordinary to succeed. You just need to be consistent. You don't need to predict the future. You only need to prepare for it. Let your wealth be the quiet echo of your daily discipline. Let your life be the evidence of values lived deeply. Let your legacy be more than assets. Let it be intention, clarity, and love made visible through the choices you make every single day.